Ever notice how some people just seem to click with everyone they meet? They can smooth talk their way out of anything, make friends effortlessly. It's like they've got this secret formula for winning people over.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Like some folks just have this natural charisma.
Yeah. And think about this. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, this huge bestseller, only had a tiny first print run back in 1937, just 5,000 copies. But it became this global phenomenon. It makes you wonder what he tapped into, right?
Absolutely. There's clearly something universal about the desire to connect and influence.
Right. And a listener sent us their sources, and we're going deep on that exact book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. We're going to extract those golden nuggets, those practical tips you can start using today.
Makes sense. A book from 1937 still resonating today. There must be some timeless wisdom in there.
Totally. And remember, Carnegie wasn't some armchair philosopher. He taught public speaking and human relations, even to engineers. These super technical folks understood that connecting with people was just as important as their technical skills.
The 1981 preface actually mentions that. The engineers saw that the top earners weren't always the most technically brilliant. It was their communication skills and ability to rally people that really made the difference.
Precisely. Carnegie noticed this gap. There wasn't a practical guide for these essential skills. So he basically became a researcher, interviewing tons of successful people, inventors, presidents, business leaders, to uncover their secrets for connecting with others.
Think about it. Marconi, Edison, FDR, even Hollywood stars. He really went all out.
Yeah, he did. All that research led to his famous lecture and then to this iconic book. So let's dive into those core principles, starting with part 1, fundamental techniques in handling people.
Sounds like a solid foundation.
Right. And the first principle is don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Seems simple, right? But it's deeper than just being nice. It's about recognizing that criticism is a dead end.
It really is. It triggers defensiveness, resentment. Instead, focus on understanding the other person's perspective.
Exactly. Carnegie points to B.F. Skinner's research. Positive reinforcement is so much more effective for learning than punishment. And psychologist Hans Selye talked about how we all crave approval, but we dread condemnation. It makes sense, right?
Totally. Think about it. When someone criticizes you, your first instinct isn't to say, oh, you're right, I messed up.
Yeah, you're more likely to start justifying yourself. Like, well, here's why I did that.
Exactly. Carnegie gives this great example of a safety coordinator who kept telling workers to wear their hard hats. They'd comply while he was there, but as soon as he left, off came the hats.
Oh, I see. It's about true buy-in, not just surface obedience.
Right. And Carnegie talks about Abraham Lincoln. Early on, he was pretty critical of people, even wrote anonymous letters and poems that really stung. It backfired, caused lasting resentment.
Wow. So even Honest Abe had to learn this the hard way.
Yeah, his transformation is fascinating. During the Civil War, imagine the pressure he was under. But he learned to control that urge to criticize. There's a story about a letter he wrote to General Meade after Gettysburg.
Meade was the general who won that battle, right? What was Lincoln criticizing him for?
Well, Lincoln felt Meade hadn't pursued the retreating Confederate army aggressively enough, thought a huge opportunity was lost.
Ah, I see. So he wrote this scathing letter.
He did. But then he thought better of it. He realized that sending that letter would only make Meade defensive, not improve anything. So he didn't send it.
Wow, that's some serious self-control.
It shows real leadership, right?
Yeah.
Focusing on the bigger picture. Carnegie also had this anecdote about Herbert Hoover. A mechanic serviced the wrong airplane. Huge mistake. But Hoover didn't yell or punish him.
What did he do?
He just calmly said, well, give it another try. Showed trust instead of condemnation. Imagine how that mechanic felt.
Yeah, he probably went above and beyond after that. Carnegie also mentions reading Father Forgets before criticizing children.
Right. That piece is about a father realizing how much he'd hurt his son with constant criticism. He was holding him to adult standards, missing the innocence of childhood.
It's a powerful reminder to approach interactions with more understanding. So principle 1, choose understanding over criticism. It can make a huge difference in your relationships.
Absolutely. Next up, principle 2, give honest and sincere appreciation.
Okay, that sounds a lot more positive. So how does that work?
It's about recognizing and acknowledging the value others bring. It's not just flattery, it's genuine.
So what's the difference between appreciation and flattery?
Carnegie says that sincere appreciation is like legal tender that all souls enjoy. It's about truly seeing and acknowledging the good in others. Flattery is just empty words.
Right, it's got to be genuine. So why is appreciation so important?
Because, deep down, Everyone wants to feel important. Carnegie traces this throughout history. Washington, Columbus, Catherine the Great, they all craved recognition.
That makes sense. We all want to feel like we matter.
Exactly. And people seek this feeling in different ways. He contrasts John Dillinger, the gangster who wanted notoriety.
Oh, yeah, the guy who robbed banks.
Right. He craved attention, even if it was negative. Then you have someone like John D. Rockefeller, who built a business empire and became a philanthropist.
So both wanted to be important, but their approaches were totally different.
Exactly. And Carnegie talks about Charles Schwab, this steel tycoon. He made a massive salary, not just because he knew steel, but because he was a master at handling people.
And what was his secret?
Appreciation. Schwab believed in praising people, recognizing their efforts. Carnegie even tells this story about a farm wife who'd cooked for her family for 20 years without a single word of thanks.
Oh, no. That's sad.
Yeah, she eventually snapped and started serving them hay. It's a funny story, but with a dark side. We need appreciation, even for simple things.
I get it. And he contrasts that with this heartwarming story about a husband who started sending his wife roses and love notes instead of criticizing her, and it totally changed their relationship.
Powerful, right? Shows how much a little appreciation can do. But I can hear some listeners saying, isn't this just being nice? Isn't this flattery?
Yeah, that's a valid point. So how do we make sure it's genuine?
Carnegie is adamant that sincere appreciation is different. He quotes Emerson, who said, "Every man I meet is my superior in some way. In that, I learn of him."
So it's about approaching others with humility, looking for their strengths, not their flaws.
Exactly. And then expressing that appreciation honestly. Principle 2, sincere appreciation is powerful. It makes people feel valued.
Got it. So principle 3 is arouse in the other person an eager want. Now, this sounds a bit manipulative.
Not necessarily. It's more about understanding and appealing to motivation. Carnegie quotes Harry A. Overstreet, who said, "Action springs out of what we fundamentally desire."
So to influence someone, you need to talk about what they want.
Precisely. He uses this great analogy. Emerson and his son were trying to push a calf into a barn, but it wouldn't budge. Then the Irish housemaid came along and let the calf suck on her finger as she gently led it inside.
Ah, she understood what the calf wanted.
Exactly. She appealed to its desire, not brute force. And Carnegie mentions how Andrew Carnegie, despite limited schooling, intuitively understood this principle.
So how can we apply this in everyday life?
He gives this personal anecdote about negotiating a rent increase. Instead of just arguing about the price, he considered the hotel manager's interests, the pros and cons from his perspective.
Smart. So he framed it as a win-win.
Exactly. He secured a lower rent without even demanding it. And he compares ineffective business letters that only talk about the sender's needs to effective ones that highlight the recipient's benefits.
Like that story about Barbara Anderson's job application letter. She focused on how she could help the banks, and she got 11 interviews out of 12 applications.
Exactly. She focused on their needs, not just her own. And there's the story about the Shell oil salesman who finally motivated a complacent service station owner by appealing to his desire to be the best.
So understanding what drives people is key. And he even tells this story about parents who helped their son overcome bedwetting by focusing on what he wanted, like pajamas and a big boy bed.
It's about making the desired change align with their desires. So to recap part 1, don't criticize, appreciate genuinely, and understand what people want.
Great. So on to part 2, 6 ways to make people like you. And the first principle is become genuinely interested in other people. Now, this seems obvious. Doesn't everyone want to be liked?
Well, Carnegie starts by asking, why read a book to learn how to win friends? The key is to observe those who are naturally likable. Like a friendly dog, always wagging its tail.
I see. So it's about genuine warmth, not just trying to be liked.
Exactly. He says you can make more friends in 2 months by being genuinely interested in others than in 2 years by trying to get them interested in you. It's about shifting the focus outward.
It's not about being the most interesting person in the room, but being interested in other people. He uses the example of the magician Thurston.
Ah, the famous illusionist.
Yeah. Thurston's success wasn't just about the tricks, it was his genuine appreciation for his audience. He treated them with respect, and people felt that.
He saw them as individuals, not just a faceless crowd. And Carnegie contrasts this with performers who looked down on their audiences, and it showed.
So sincerity matters. He also gives this subtle example of a sales rep who kept a big account by chatting with the soda jerks and sales clerks before talking to the owner.
building rapport at all levels. It's about recognizing everyone's importance.
Exactly. And he talks about getting busy authors to speak at his courses simply by expressing sincere admiration for their work. People respond to genuine appreciation.
It's flattering to know someone truly appreciates your efforts. Like Madeline Rosedale's letter praising the bank staff, especially a teller who showed genuine concern for her hospitalized mother.
Small gestures can mean a lot. It wasn't a huge favor, but it showed real care. And then there's the story of the fuel salesman, Naffel, who initially struggled to sell to chain stores because he was too busy criticizing them.
Yeah, he was so focused on being right that he missed opportunities to connect.
Exactly. He finally found success when he genuinely asked for their input in a debate, showing real interest in their perspective.
So, shifting from criticism to genuine curiosity made all the difference.
Principle 1, be genuinely interested in others. It's about listening, asking thoughtful questions, and showing that you care.
It's about connection, not just trying to impress.
Okay, principle 2 is simply smile. Seems basic, but what's the big deal?
A smile is a powerful nonverbal message. It conveys warmth, liking, happiness. Think about dogs wagging their tails, babies smiling. It's instinctive, positive.
Yeah, a genuine smile can really light up a room.
Exactly. Carnegie tells this story about a vet's waiting room, all these people stressed out about their pets, and then a baby starts smiling. It totally changed the mood.
Like it broke the tension.
Right. A smile can be incredibly disarming, but he emphasizes that it has to be sincere. A fake smile is easy to spot.
So how do we make sure our smiles are genuine?
It comes from a place of inner warmth and positivity. Professor James V. McConnell even said that people who smile tend to be more successful in managing, teaching, selling, even raising happier kids.
Interesting. And he gives that example of the computer department manager who believes his friendly phone manner, which likely included a smile in his voice, helped him recruit a top PhD candidate.
Right. And the stockbroker who consciously started smiling more and saw his relationships and income improve.
The smiling can actually impact our success.
It can. And Carnegie connects smiling to inner happiness. He suggests that even if you don't feel like it, acting cheerfully can actually cultivate cheerfulness.
So fake it till you make it.
In a way, yes. He says that happiness depends more on our internal state than external circumstances. You can be poor and happy or rich and miserable.
Makes sense. He also shares Senora Maria Gonzalez's story. She overcame loneliness at work by simply smiling and greeting her colleagues.
It's a proactive way to create a more positive environment. Carnegie beautifully describes a smile as something priceless that can't be bought or stolen, and it enriches both the giver and the receiver.
Principle 2, smile genuinely and it will pay dividends. Okay, principle 3 is remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language.
Names hold so much power.
They do. He gives this amazing example of Jim Farley, this political mastermind behind FDR's campaigns. Farley had this almost superhuman ability to remember names and details about people.
And he used it strategically. He would associate names with specific facts about each person, so he could recall them later and make people feel truly seen.
That's impressive. Imagine meeting someone who not only remembers your name, but also brings up a specific detail about your life from months ago.
It's incredibly flattering. Makes you feel like you truly matter. Carnegie mentions those personal letters Farley wrote during the campaign, addressing people by name, referencing things they discussed.
Wow. So it's not just about remembering, it's about using the name in a meaningful way.
Exactly. He also points out that forgetting or misspelling someone's name can really backfire. Even a small error can make a negative impression.
Like that story from the public speaking course in Paris. A misspelled name on a form letter caused a huge backlash.
Shows how personal our names are. And Carnegie circles back to Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate who understood the power of names from a young age. He used it to his advantage, even as a kid.
Interesting. And later he used it to resolve a conflict with George Pullman, constantly using Pullman's name respectfully throughout their interactions.
It's about acknowledging and validating the other person. He also points out that we put names on monuments, buildings. It's a testament to this deep human need for recognition.
We want to be remembered, to leave a mark.
Right. And Carnegie addresses the excuse of being too busy to remember names. He contrasts that with FDR, who made a conscious effort to remember even the names of mechanics who worked on his cars.
Shows dedication. And there's that story about Chamberlain teaching FDR about his special car and learning from the president's habit of remembering his name.
Roosevelt clearly understood the impact of that simple act. So, Principle 3, Make a conscious effort to remember and use people's names. It's a small but powerful gesture.
Got it. Principle 4. Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves.
This seems like a natural continuation from being genuinely interested in others.
It is. Carnegie tells this story about a bridge party. A woman talked to him for ages about his travels, even though he mostly listened and asked questions.
So she enjoyed the conversation even though she was doing most of the talking. Exactly. He realized the key to being a good conversationalist is often being a good listener. He quotes Charles W. Eliot, former president of Harvard, who said, "Exclusive attention to the person who is speaking to you is very important. Nothing else is so flattering as that."
It's about making someone feel truly heard.
Exactly. Like that story about the telephone company troubleshooter who resolved a customer's furious complaint by simply listening for hours.
Wow, sometimes just venting is all we need.
Right. And Carnegie tells this story of Mr. Detmer dealing with a customer who refused to pay his bill. He was ready to storm out, but Mr. Detmer just listened patiently.
What happened?
He acknowledged the customer's anger, allowed him to vent, and they worked it out.
So staying calm and listening helped de-escalate the situation.
Absolutely. And there's that inspiring story about the Western Union office boy who basically educated himself by writing to famous people and just asking them to talk about themselves.
Wow, he turned listening into a learning opportunity.
Right. Carnegie emphasizes that people are far more interested in themselves and their problems than in you. He compares it to how a toothache feels more important than a famine across the world.
It's a bit self-centered, but it's true. We're all the center of our own universe.
Principle 4. Be a good listener and encourage others to talk about themselves. It's a simple but powerful way to connect.
Principle 5. Talk in terms of the other person's interests, so find common ground.
More than that, it's about actively engaging with what they care about. Carnegie gives this example of Theodore Roosevelt, who would meticulously research his visitors' interests before they arrived.
Wow, that's dedication.
It showed them that he valued their time and perspectives. Carnegie also tells this story from William Lyon Phelps about a lawyer who spent an entire evening talking about boats.
Sounds boring.
Well, the lawyer wasn't actually interested in books, but his host was, and that made all the difference. It's about adapting your conversation to what matters to them.
Makes sense. And he talks about Edward L. Chalif, who got a corporation president to fund a Boy Scout trip by first expressing interest in the president's prized possession, a $1 million framed check.
He found a point of connection, something the president was clearly passionate about.
Smart. And there's the story of the bread salesman who finally got a hotel manager's business by talking about the manager's involvement in the Greeters Society.
He finally tapped into what truly interested the manager.
So it's not about manipulating people, but about finding genuine shared interests.
Exactly. He also mentions Edward E. Harriman, who got a job by researching his prospective employer's interests. And Howard Z. Herzig noticed that engaging in others' interests actually enriched his own life.
It becomes a two-way street.
Exactly. Principle 5. Talk in terms of the other person's interests. It makes the conversation more meaningful for both parties.
Okay, the final principle in part 2. Make the other person feel important and do it sincerely.
This builds on appreciation, but it's about going beyond words.
So actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. He tells this simple story about a man complimenting a woman's hat and getting a positive reaction. It highlights that universal desire for appreciation. But then he asks, what was the motive behind the compliment?
Was it genuine or was it trying to get something?
Exactly. Carnegie says that even small acts of kindness or appreciation should be sincere, given without expecting anything in return. He quotes Emerson again. Every man I meet is my superior in some way.
Right. There's always something we can learn from and admire in others.
Exactly. He contrasts that with people who boast to inflate their own egos, quoting Shakespeare's line about the fantastic tricks proud men play.
We all know those types, always trying to one-up everyone.
And Carnegie shares stories from his courses where people applied this principle with amazing results, like the Connecticut attorney who inherited a valuable car simply because he sincerely appreciated it and the memories it held for his elderly relative.
It wasn't about the car, it was about the connection.
Exactly. And he tells the story of a judge who gave Carnegie a valuable puppy and his time just because Carnegie genuinely admired his hobby and achievements.
It was about recognizing the judge's passions.
Right. And Adamson getting that big theater chair order from George Eastman, the Kodak founder, by genuinely admiring his office and learning about its history.
So it's about focusing on them, their accomplishments, their world.
Exactly. Principle 6. Make people feel important sincerely. It's about showing genuine respect and appreciation. That wraps up part 2.
Okay, on to part 3. How to win people to your way of thinking. This sounds like the heart of persuasion.
It is. And principle 1 might surprise you. You can't win an argument.
Now, that seems counterintuitive. Isn't debate how we reach understanding?
Carnegie learned this after World War I. He was at a banquet honoring Sir Ross Smith, a famous aviator, and got into a heated argument about a literary quote.
So a battle of wits at a fancy dinner?
Pretty much. Carnegie was certain he was right, even found proof. But he only succeeded in alienating the other person. Winning the argument cost him a friendship.
Ah, so even when you're factually right, you can lose something more important.
Exactly. He references a piece from Bits and Pieces with suggestions for keeping disagreements from becoming arguments. Welcome disagreement, be thankful for it, be careful of first impressions, thank your opponents, and postpone action to let things cool down.
Good advice.
Right. He gives an example of an auto dealership manager who disarmed angry customers by readily admitting when the dealership messed up.
Smart move. Take responsibility instead of getting defensive.
Exactly. It often de-escalated the situation. And he tells the story of a lawyer, Mr. S., who corrected a Supreme Court justice. He was technically right, but it didn't persuade the justice, just annoyed him.
Being right isn't always enough.
It isn't. Most people aren't driven solely by logic. Emotions, pride, those play a huge role. Carnegie quotes James Harvey Robinson, who said, "A great deal of time is wasted in this world on account of the aggrandizing pronoun my."
We're all attached to our own opinions.
Right. And Ben Franklin had this clever approach to disagreements. He'd avoid directly contradicting people and use softer language like, "I conceive," or "it appears to me."
Less confrontational, more open to discussion.
Exactly. And Carnegie tells about this guy, Mr. Crowley, whose firm was losing money because he kept winning arguments with customers.
Oh, that's not good for business.
He realized that and stopped arguing, and his business improved dramatically.
So, principle 1, respect other people's opinions and don't tell them they're wrong.
Even if you think they are.
Right.
It's more about building bridges than winning battles.
Okay, principle 2. If you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically.
Own your mistakes.
Carnegie tells that story about walking his dog Rex without a Lucian muzzle and getting caught by a policeman.
Rex got in trouble again.
Yep. But instead of arguing, Carnegie immediately admitted he was wrong, and the officer was surprisingly lenient.
That honesty probably caught him off guard.
It did. And he tells about this employee who owned up to a big mistake, and his boss, who was initially furious, actually gained respect for him because of it.
Taking responsibility can build trust. And then there's the story of the father who admitted he was wrong to his son after attending Carnegie's course. It led to a reconciliation after years of estrangement.
Wow, powerful stuff.
It shows that admitting fault can heal relationships. Carnegie also mentions Elbert Hubbard, who would often disarm critics by agreeing with them to some extent.
Finding common ground.
Exactly. He quotes the proverb, "By fighting, you never get enough, but by yielding, you get more than you expected."
So, principle 2. Admit your mistakes quickly and emphatically. It shows humility and builds trust.
Absolutely. Now, principle 3. Begin in a friendly way.
Seems obvious, but is it always easy?
Not always. Carnegie quotes Woodrow Wilson. "If you come at me with your fists doubled, I think I can promise you that mine will double as fast as yours. But if you come to me and say, 'Let us sit down and take counsel together, and if we differ from each other, understand why it is that we differ,' we will presently find that we are not so far apart after all."
So, approach with an open hand, not a clenched fist.
Exactly. He tells this amazing story about John D. Rockefeller Jr. dealing with striking miners who hated him.
The Rockefellers were known for their tough business practices.
Right. But instead of being confrontational, Rockefeller Jr. addressed the miners with friendliness and respect.
How did they react?
They were stunned. His sincere approach completely changed the dynamic.
Wow. And Carnegie shares a story about getting a rent reduction simply by being friendly and appreciative to his landlord.
It's about building rapport.
Right.
And he talks about Dean Woodcock diffusing a tense situation with a photographer by being friendly and explaining the circumstances. And Mr. Eberson at the bank, who took a friendly approach to understand why a customer was hesitant.
So, starting with friendliness creates a more receptive environment.
Exactly. He even gives an example of a successful job interview where the interviewer's friendly demeanor helped the candidate relax and convince himself he wanted the job.
It's amazing how much a positive attitude can influence an interaction.
Principle 3. Begin in a friendly way. It sets the tone for a more positive and productive interaction.
Okay, principle 4. Get the other person saying yes, yes immediately.
This is about building momentum towards agreement.
So start with points of agreement.
Exactly. Carnegie explains the Socratic method, asking questions that lead to yes responses.
Like guiding them towards your conclusions step by step.
Precisely. He tells the story of an export manager who saved a business relationship by getting the customer to agree with him on several points before addressing the main problem.
So building a foundation of agreement.
Right. And he gives the example of an insurance inspector who handled a challenging claimant by starting with points they could both agree on.
Principle 4. Get the other person saying yes, yes, immediately. Smart strategy.
Absolutely. Now, principle 5. Let the other person do a great deal of the talking.
So be a good listener.
More than that. It's about actively encouraging them to talk, to express themselves.
Why is that so important?
Because, as we've discussed, people are most interested in themselves. Carnegie gives this example of two men talking business, and the one who listened more was considered the better conversationalist.
That's interesting.
And he tells about a man who won a business deal by simply letting the other person talk about his achievements.
So sometimes the less you talk, the more you achieve.
In a way, yes. And there's this story of the General Motors employee who handled a complaint by just listening attentively to the customer vent.
Sometimes people just need to get it all out.
Exactly. Principle 5. Let the other person do a great deal of the talking. It's about making them feel heard and understood.
Principle 6. Let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers. Now that sounds tricky.
It is. It's about subtly guiding people without them realizing they're being led.
So how do we do that?
Carnegie asks, do we have more faith in ideas we discover ourselves or those handed to us?
Probably the ones we discover ourselves.
Exactly. He uses Adolf Seitz as an example. Seitz motivated his sales team by asking for their input, making them feel like they came up with the solutions.
So give them ownership.
Exactly. He quotes Lao Tzu, "Wishing to be above men, putteth himself below them. Wishing to be before them, he putteth himself behind them."
That's deep.
It's about empowering others, letting them shine.
Principle 6. Let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers. It's about subtle influence, not forceful direction.
Right. Principle 7. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view.
This is about empathy, right?
Absolutely. Carnegie emphasizes that understanding the other person's perspective is crucial for successful interactions.
He tells the story about Sam Douglas, who used to criticize his wife's gardening until he tried to see it from her point of view and realized how much she enjoyed it.
Changing your perspective can change your relationship.
And there's the father who struggled with his sons not doing chores until he involved them in the planning, making them feel like it was their idea.
Giving them ownership.
And Elizabeth Novak, who was late on a car payment. She looked at it from the creditor's perspective and sincerely apologized, which helped avoid worse consequences.
Empathy can go a long way. Carnegie suggests that even if you only take away this one principle from the book, it can be life-changing.
It's that fundamental.
It is. Principle 7. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. It's about understanding, not just judging.
Now, principle 8. Be sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires.
This takes empathy a step further. It's about feeling with them, not just understanding their perspective.
Okay. How do we do that?
Carnegie offers a magic phrase to stop arguments and build goodwill.
A magic phrase. I'm intrigued.
It is. I don't blame you at all for feeling as you do.
Right.
If I were you, I would undoubtedly feel just as you do.
It's about validating their emotions.
Exactly. He gives examples of a customer service rep using this phrase to calm an angry customer, a father using it to acknowledge his children's desires, and an office manager using it to address an employee's grievance.
So, acknowledging their feelings even if you don't agree with their actions.
Right. Principle 8. Be sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires. It's about connecting on an emotional level.
Principle 9. Appeal to the nobler motives.
This is about tapping into people's better nature.
So, assuming the best in people.
Carnegie says most people see themselves as altruistic, honorable.
Even if they don't always act that way.
Right. But by appealing to their nobler motives, you can often influence their behavior.
Interesting. How does that work in practice?
He gives the example of Lord Northcliffe, who got a potentially scandalous photo removed from publication by appealing to the photographer's respect for motherhood.
He appealed to their higher values.
Exactly. And there's the landlord, who got a tenant to cooperate during wartime by appealing to his patriotism, and the collection agent, who recovered debts by appealing to people's sense of fairness.
So frame your requests in a way that aligns with their ideals.
Principle 9. Appeal to the nobler motives. It's about inspiring people to be their best selves.
Principle 10. Dramatize your ideas.
This is about making your message memorable.
Like storytelling.
Exactly. Carnegie says that just stating a truth isn't enough. It needs to be vivid, engaging. He uses the example of a rat poison company that boosted sales by creating a window display with live rats.
No, that's a bit creepy.
But effective. And he talks about Jim Yeamans, who got an important appointment by sending a handwritten note in a self-addressed envelope requesting a specific time.